So when I'm doing life planning, I don't want to talk more than 20% of the time. And there's been times it's been under 10% because I'm really there to listen and to let you as a client start to talk things through and figure things out. I'll ask you questions, but it's really not me answering and giving you answers. It's more me just listening and asking questions.
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today, we are joined by Phil Weiss, the founder of Apprise Wealth Management, a firm dedicated to helping individuals, particularly women, navigating life transitions, gain confidence and clarity in their financial futures. Phil began his career as a tax professional at Deloitte & Touche in 1987 and brings more than 25 years of deep experience in personal finance and investment management. He's a CFA chart holder, a CPA, and an RLP, a rare trifecta that underscores both technical acumen and emotional intelligence. Through his writing, public speaking, and podcast appearances, Phil champions a long-term, fundamentals-based approach to investing, paired with personal passion for empowering clients through education. At the heart of his work is a belief that financial planning is more than numbers. It's a profound way to serve others during life's pivotal moments. Welcome, Phil, to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Thanks so much for having me today, Marla. I'm happy to be here and I look forward to our chat.
Yeah, likewise. So you started as a tax professional. I'm really curious, what took you from tax? Were you doing private taxes, individual taxes, and then that took you into financial planning and wealth?
No, it was kind of a much longer path than that. So I started with Deloitte in the tax department. And when you start in the tax department, you do everything. I did individual taxes, partnerships, corporations, all kinds of different taxes. And I eventually ended up specializing in international corporate tax planning and research. So if you used to hear the stories about companies that had money that was trapped overseas, the planning that we did was really the kind of thing that helped get that cash trapped like that because of the differentials in the tax rates. I got to the point where I felt like the purpose of my job was to tell companies how to shuffle paper around to increase the size of the national debt. That's really not a very redeeming way to view what you do. So I started a journey that took me out of tax. And the beginning of that was back when the Motley Fool had online portfolios. There was one called originally Cash King, and then it became Rulemaker. And I helped to manage that portfolio. There's a book that David and Tom Gardner wrote called Rulemakers, Rule Breakers. And you'll see me mentioned in that book because of my involvement with that portfolio. The end of that time, I found out about the CFA and decided that that was my way to get out of the tax department. Because once you're in tax, it's really hard to get out. So I started that process and worked on my CFA. That's what took me. I'm originally from New Jersey. I moved to where I am now, the Baltimore area, because T. Rowe Price hired me. And I was working for T. Rowe. I was a writer and editor for T. Rowe. I finished the CFA and I'm like, okay, I want to be an analyst. That's really why I did this. And like, well, you have all the right credentials, but you didn't get them the way that we normally want people to get them. So you're going to have to take like 3 steps back and see what happens. I'm like, yeah, that just doesn't work for me. We had 3 kids at the time. Now we have 4. And I went and I decided I wrote a research report, a deep dive into a company. And I used that as a ticket to try to get myself a job. And I did. I found a job as an analyst. I covered oil and gas stocks like ExxonMobil, the integrated oil companies, the oil field services companies like Schlumberger and Halliburton, the refiners, all those kind of companies.
You stayed at T. Rowe? That was at T. Rowe
No,
as well?
I left. I got that research got me a job. I was Argus Research is who I worked for. So if you go on to Schwab, you can see that was where the regular public could see our work. And I used to do a lot of TV spots and all kinds of things like that too, like CNBC and all that. And because of what happened in 08 and 09, everybody got in a cut in salary. And I had 4 kids by then, and I wanted to get back to where I was. And I tried to do some things to get my salary up, but they really couldn't afford to pay me more. And so I left, and that's when I went to work for another advisor who I worked for about a little over 3 years. And my primary role with that advisor was on the stock picking and investment management side. I then say that I got tired of working for idiots. So I started to be the idiot. And that's what really led me to launch Apprise. And so I launched Apprise. Technically, it was 2017, but it really wasn't until 2018 that I made it my full-time thing.
So interesting. So was there kind of it is a big awakening. I also worked in asset management and kind of deep operational banking and had a very nonlinear path and came into wealth tech. And wealth is very different. You're actually working with kind of the people on the streets that need, help and support. And you're working with so much different complex humanity, emotions. Emotions are such a huge part of wealth. Yes. And so when you made that switch from corporate financial services to working for an advisor, what were some of the kind of awakenings and what kept you here? What was that spark? Is there something that really you felt was, this is really my calling and this is what I want to keep doing and launch your firm?
So, initially it was just because I wanted to get more on the investment side of the world and I wanted to be involved more in a job that allowed me to work with people. And that's really my favorite part of what I do now, is really the relationships that I can build with my clients. I love that part of it. But if I look at my journey to where I am now, I'm going to tell you a little story. And so, growing up in my house, it was the typical model. My father was responsible for the finances. My mother was responsible for taking care of my sister and me. But here's the thing. When it came to managing finances, my father wasn't good at it, and that's putting it mildly. We had unpaid bills. We had no credit. We had no savings. When I was old enough to drive, I remember going to local utilities, power companies, things like that, to pay the bills so that our services could be turned back on or wouldn't be turned off. When it was time for me to go to college, I was told, you can go anywhere you want. So I was going to I went to Duke and I was going to be a doctor and I was a psych major. And I did a lot to stay in school because my father didn't pay. At the end of my junior year, I owed the school enough money that we agreed that I should leave, pay off my debt, and then I could come back. So I left and I moved across the country to Arizona. I went out there for vacation. I met some people. I decided that was better and it was a toxic environment at home. So I moved out to Arizona. When I was ready to come back to school, I was like, I don't think my grades are good enough to get into medical school. And if I go and get my psychology degree, I'm going to have to go to grad school when I'm done. And that just doesn't seem to make sense in my financial situation. So I decided I wanted to study accounting, and Duke doesn't offer accounting degrees. They want you to go get a liberal arts degree and then go get an MBA. It's like the Ivy League schools, Duke, a lot of the schools at that level, that's what they want. So I applied to University of Arizona because I had Arizona residency, having lived there for a year and a half. I applied to Rutgers because I still had New Jersey residency through my parents. And I came back home and I went to Rutgers to study accounting. I thought I'd get a better job coming out of Rutgers. While that was happening, my mother went back to school and she ultimately became an occupational therapist and launched her own business. And I know in my heart that the reason she did that was to put herself in a situation where she could get strong enough to be on her own. After I finished school, I moved back home because I had paid for tuition. I had paid for my rent for the house that I shared with others with credit card checks at times because I still didn't have all the money I needed. But I know that credit card debt isn't the best thing, but to me, it made sense. And I wasn't that educated at the time about any of it either, I will admit. But it made sense because it was going to get me to where I wanted to be. So I'm living home, and one day I come home and I go to get the mail, and there's credit card bills and they have my name on them. There's only one problem. They weren't mine. My father forged my name to open up credit card accounts because he couldn't get credit.
No.
I called the companies. I reached out. One of them sent me an application and I knew it was his handwriting. So I waited to confront till I had the evidence so that he couldn't deny it. We got those cards taken out of my name and put into his. I used my rent to make sure the balances got paid off. I moved out. Then my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And that's when we found out how bad the financial situation at home really was. Those credit cards, well, when they moved them out of my name, because my father had been making the payments, because even though he forged my name, he didn't want to get me in too much trouble. So he didn't not pay. He at least paid enough that they wouldn't give him a hard time. Well, they were all in collection. My parents had to sell their house, ultimately had to sell their house while my mother was in treatment because they were going to get foreclosed on. And my mom asked me to help. I did what I could, but unfortunately my mom didn't make it. Her breast cancer metastasized to her brain, and she passed away about 18 months after her diagnosis. So now I view the work that I do as trying to help other women avoid the type of things that my mother went through. And then you also mentioned that I'm a registered life planner. And so that's one of the things that I did because, I got all this technical background. I was a psych major, so I like relationships. I like people, but I wanted to do something to help make that relationship more personal and give me a way to really get to know my clients better. But that training to become a registered life planner is experiential. So I did my own life plan. The first element of my life plan is I want to create a scholarship for women who go back to school later in life like my mother did. And so I've started to put money aside for that. I went back to the school that she went to. I went back to her professional organization. I didn't really like what they wanted to do. So I'm going to do this myself. I'm not ready yet. I don't have enough to make sure that to feel comfortable that I have something that's sustainable, that can provide the level of support that I'd like. So I have a separate account created. I fund that. And when I'm ready, I'll figure out a way to do it on my own. But that's what I really want to do.
That's really exciting. So thank you for kind of sharing your life story that brought you to be inspired to be a wealth manager. When you think about guiding clients, there were so many elements of your story that had to do with transition. They had to do with trauma and money trauma and emotionally charged financial decisions. When you kind of connect with others, women who come to you and they are in that period of trauma, they're in a period of, I'm experiencing something very emotionally charged. How do you address it? What are some of your tips for the folks listening here to kind of say, here's how an advisor can best help when somebody is coming to you with experiences that you don't know, you only know the surface. And then as you explore more, it can be pretty traumatic.
So I think the first thing is listen. I mean, the key to being a good life planner is listening. It's not about me solving all your problems. It's not about me telling you what to do. It's about me listening and helping you figure out what it is that's important to you and what it is that you want to do. Because if we can, I like to use this acronym. If we have a team of resources. It's not just about money. It's our time, it's our energy, our attention, and our money. If we can align those and how we use them with what's important to us, we're going to live a happier, more fulfilled life. So the life planning process is really about helping you figure out what it is that really matters to you, what it is that's important to you, so that you can then go on and do things that are meaningful and help you live a fulfilling life. And I said that listening is so important. So I use an AI tool to help me when I have my client meetings. And when it's done two things that I think are really great. One is I don't have to write down a lot of notes when I'm on a call, which allows me to really listen, because when we start to write and listen at the same time, we're going to lose some words. So I can really pay attention. And the other thing is it actually tells me how much I've been talking. So when I'm doing life planning, I don't want to talk more than 20% of the time. And there's been times it's been under 10% because I'm really there to listen and to let you as a client start to talk things through and figure things out. I'll ask you questions, but it's really not me answering and giving you answers. It's more me just listening and asking questions.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Knomee is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Knomee helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at Knomee.com. That resonates. And I also, I've appreciated seeing the percentage of time in a meeting that I'm talking. When you talk a little bit more about the life planning process and really getting to the heart of what matters most to somebody. So that is also kind of what Knomee is all about. We're very much about codifying and systematizing that deep self-discovery so that people can come to the table really understanding what is it that matters to me when I talk to a professional who helps me with life planning. Can you share a little bit about the life planning process that you use and how data kind of comes to play in helping somebody figure that out?
Sure. So I learned life planning through the Kinder Institute, which was started by George Kinder, who, along with Dick Wagner, they're kind of the fathers of life planning. And it centers around a process. The acronym is EVOKE. The first E is exploration. So an exploration is really along the lines of, why are you here? What made you decide that you wanted to seek out help? And just starting to dream big and think about what your ideal life might look like. After we do that meeting, we get into vision. And during the vision meeting, I give you some exercises to complete. One of them is called the Hardcore Grid, where you kind of list out those things that there's like I'd love to do it. It's a core part of me. And then it's like the shoulds and the oughts kind of thing. And then it's in terms of what you want to be or who you want to be and do and those type of things. And then, but there's also 3 questions. And the 3 questions are really the key to the process. The first question is really an easy, fun question. It's like, imagine that money was no object. Mm-hmm. How would you live your life? What would you do? How would you spend your time? What would you want to do? And then just like a dream big. Like I said, money's no object, big as you want. Then the second question gets a little bit more serious because now this time you go to the doctor and you get the unfortunate news that you have 5 to 10 years left to live. Money is part of the equation now. The doctor tells you you have 5 to 10 years left to live. The good news is you're not going to feel sick. The bad news is you don't know when you're going to go. And now the question is, what will you do and how will you live your life within that context? And then we get to the third question, which is really a hard one. This time you go to the doctor and you get the unfortunate news that today's the day. The question isn't what you're going to do, although I will tell you some people try to answer it that way because they've answered the first 2 questions that way. And it's just natural to want to do that. It's really, what did you not get to do? And who did you not get to be? And when you start to think about it in those terms, the idea really is to identify those things that are really important to you that you could start to do now so that you don't get to the end of life not having done them and feeling terrible or like you didn't live a great life because you didn't. Like I mentioned the scholarship, like why not do something like that now when I can get to see the benefit and start to provide the benefit for longer than wait and have that happen when I'm gone or not even get to do it because if nobody even knew about it. Mm-hmm. Lots of things like that. When people answer that question, it's usually their answers usually they want to travel, they want to spend time with family. If you're religious, there's some people that have religious aspects to their answer. And some things like we can't, like I know I'd like to be a grandfather someday, but I can't promise that's going to happen. So what can I do? Well, I can be the best dad and have the best relationship with my kids that I can. So at least that way, if I don't live long enough to be granddad, well, my kids can still tell stories and speak fondly of me because of all the quality time we spend together. Like my kids, we're going to go on every year we go on 2 trips. Even still, my kids are older and they still come with us. Trips. And our oldest that travels with us is going to will be 25 in October. And like we finish a trip and our kids are like, where are we going next? And the one that has a serious relationship is like, and when does she start to get to come with us?
Yeah, that's wonderful. I feel like there is a nice framework that, the life planning introduces to help people really articulate those things in a way that enables them to be a lot more present, to be more focused. And obviously, like it already kind of assumes that people are looking at money as a tool. They're not just chasing money as the end goal. That, the people that are looking for life planning are not basically saying, yeah, my life is to just please make me as much money as I possibly can. And so you're kind of self-selecting clients that actually care about this type of an approach to managing their money that helps them recognize their money to live a better life. What are some of the things that you have found in the conversations that you've had with these clients? How do people react to these types of exercises? Do they find it challenging? Where do they find it challenging? And how can you help guide them so that they're giving you the type of information that you need in order to then allocate that capital into where it needs to be going?
So I'm going to finish too that there's more to the process, right? So after we take those 3 questions, we make them into a vision of something that for you to do within the next, usually it shouldn't be more than 2 years. And usually it's within the next 6 to 12 months so that you can start to think about and take actions around what you want to do and to be more motivated to do it. And then we go through obstacles, which are just the things that can get in the way, like how you're going to address that, what are you going to do about it, who are you going to get to help you, and probably most importantly, when, so you start to commit to a time. But all those things are important. And in terms of the process itself, like going through all that, it really is helpful. You're right. Money's a tool that lets us do other things, right? And different clients react different ways. Like I had one client that just says, I don't want to do this. They don't want to do it. That's their choice. But usually that's not the kind of person that's going to work with me. This is somebody that started working with me before I formally adopted the life planning process. But most people appreciate it. And, I had a client recently that I was going through it and she started to cry, and because it can be emotional as you start to think about these things. And she said, am I the only one that cries? I said, no, I did when I did it too. Like it's an emotional process, but to think about these things and to be able to address them now is very helpful. And I'll tell you that one of the first clients that I life planned, was somebody who I'd been working with for a year or two. And it was in the middle of my training. We came home because there's 3 parts to the training. And I came home from the middle part. And I got an email from her and she said, Phil, I just took a leave of absence from work. I don't know what it means to my financial plan. I don't know if I'm going to go back. I don't know anything, but I had to do this. And I started to email. I'm like, no, this is not the time for an email. I'm going to give her a call. And I called her and I said, let's work on your life plan. And we did. And when we started, like my life plan is on my website because I believe that if you share with me, I'm happy to share with you. I just feel it's fair. And I like transparency. And so she read my life plan. And she said to me, Phil, thank you so much. Because I've been sitting here this time trying to build the biggest pile of money. I never thought about what it was for or even how much I needed. So we worked on her life plan and we finished the initial plan. And not everything is exactly the way that we mapped it out, but nothing ever is, right? But about a year after we did it, I got another email from her. She said, so Phil, when I was in my 20s, she's now in her early 50s. I used to go to, she lives outside of Chicago. I used to go to Cubs games. And I'd see these older women taking tickets and working as ushers and stuff like that. And she's thought to herself, I want to do that someday. So she goes, I went onto the Cubs website and I applied for a job and I went in for an interview and I go in, I'm wearing my Cubs World Series t-shirt, my Cubs jersey. And there's all these younger kids and they're dressed nicely and everything else. I got the job. She goes, I don't know how long it's going to last, but I got the job. She goes, there was a concert at Wrigley Field last year. And she's like, I'm going to at least want to make it to the concert. She made it through the whole baseball season, did that concert, worked the Winter Classic that was in Wrigley Field last December, the hockey game. She's working for the Cubs again this year. They give her lots of special assignments. It's not because she needs the money. Now, this was a couple that they both were successful executives. They lived on one salary. So they really were in a position where she didn't have to work anymore. And so what was she dealing with? Like, it was a really hard job. She didn't go back to that job. It was very stressful. It was not a good place to work. She had a daughter, one of their daughters had just started college and she was going through a lot at school. And my client was on the phone with her 1, 2 in the morning, trying to talk to her daughter. Like, that's not easy to do when you have to get up and go to work early in the morning. The other one was in high school. So now she's there for her family. They have a couple rental properties that she had purchased during COVID. She can do what she needs to with them. She takes care of the family finances. Her husband doesn't do the finances. She's the one that does the finances. And the process allowed her to have the freedom. Like, she's a different person when I talk to her, when I look at her. I can see the change in her. And she's even told me, she even told friends, I went to meet some of her friends, and she told them that going through the life planning process changed her life.
So it's beautiful that is kind of the goal and the mission. Just in the interest of time, I want to kind of try to start to wrap up. So I generally ask, what is an instance in your life or a conversation you had that changed your relationship with money? I want to kind of ask you a slight different variation of this. So you talked a little bit about your mother and how impactful her experience was on you. Can you just share with what is the instance or your life? Like, what is the reason that you have focused your practice around women, and how is it that you really want your version of the practice to change the way that women view their relationship with money?
So if I look at it, I mean, I told you the why behind it, but if I go deeper, if I think back to when I was growing up, you know, my mother, she did take care of us. She wanted to work, but she didn't have great jobs. My father didn't give her a lot of spending money. She wasn't really included in the decisions around money. So she wasn't part of things. And I named my firm Apprise for a reason, because Apprise means to inform. And I love to help people understand, to educate people about finances. So that's really important to me. And if you look at so many relationships, one person is in control of the finances and the other person is usually not very informed. And that's why, I mean, statistics tell you that when a couple's married and he dies, she usually finds another advisor, because the advisor that he picked didn't listen to her, didn't care what she thought, and didn't explain things to her. And the research that I've done says that in a lot of cases, women have just as much knowledge and understanding as men about finances, but they don't have the confidence. So like, I've done this where if you give them a survey, a bunch of questions, if you remove "I don't know" from the answer choices, women will usually do as well as men, sometimes even better. And honestly, women are better investors than men. Why? Because they take a longer term approach. They don't try to gamble as much. They're not as willing to take risk in a lot of cases. And so they actually do better than men in a lot of cases. But I just think that if I can help bridge that gap and help them understand and be on solid footing and go live that life, that quality of life that they want, I think I've done a really good service.
Yeah, that's really great. And Phil, I'm very grateful to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast and sharing your thoughtful approach to guiding clients through the most challenging, important financial decisions of their life. Your personal story is incredibly inspiring, and your dedication to empowering women in transition is very aligned with our mission here at Knowing Me, Knowing You and at Knomee, where we are also very focused on understanding what really matters so that you can hold your money accountable and have more agency in the way you manage your money. Where can our listeners learn more about you and Apprise Wealth?
So as you said, my firm is Apprise Wealth Management. Website is Apprise Wealth. That's APPRISE Wealth.com. You can go there. I blog every week. You can sign up for my blog if you do apprisewealth.com/5 things. You can download a document, 5 things every woman should know about their finances. It's free. And you can schedule a call if you'd like to talk to me. And there's never a charge when I talk to somebody unless they become a client.
Fantastic. And for our listeners, what is one way you are helping your clients align their money with meaning during times of change? Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Knowing Me, Knowing You. And thank you, Phil, for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Marla, today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.